box. Let's talk about Elon Musk and this Twitter saga. Of course, now things have gotten a bit more complicated in the past week or two with his claims about the platform having too many bots and trying to pull out of his $44 billion offer and chop that down by about 25% to, in his opinion, better reflect the number of actual bot accounts. But let's go back to the initial premise of a few weeks ago when this story first broke about him thinking about manipulating the stock market for personal gain again. I mean, him thinking about buying Twitter to restore free speech to the platform. This guy wanting to buy Twitter is not a win for free speech. It wouldn't change much of anything, to be honest. One talking point I want to squash off rip: Twitter is not a utility. It is not a public commodity, never has been. Neither is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, nor is www.youtube.com. I do consider internet service itself to be a public utility, especially with the way so many students access education at all levels in both public and private institutions through online learning nowadays. I don't think it's a stretch to say that internet access is in the same realm as gas and electric, so it's well past time that developed countries began to classify it as a utility, but that's another rant for another day. Before we go any farther, what is up, family? It's your girl T, aka nappy-headed jojoba, not nappy, not jojoba. Nappy-headed jojoba. You have to say the whole thing. It's like a pimp named Slickback. Okay, back to the social medias, the Twitters and such. Despite being accessed through internet, they are in no way utilities, and anyone arguing that they are is deranged. Look, I don't like Elon Musk either, and I don't want him to own more tings, but we don't need to make up bizarre arguments as to why he shouldn't, like claiming that Twitter is a utility. Whack arguments only detract from the real problem with this potential transfer of power. Social media platforms are vessels. Our ability to speak freely neither begins nor ends with Twitter. You just might wind up having to take your shit to a soapbox on the corner if the tech libs ain't like what you got to say. Though Twitter and these other platforms are open to the public, there are still rules which are made by the rich white guys who own them. As users, we just have to deal with that or simply opt out of using the platforms. Remember, these shits are free. I've said before and I say again today, if the product is free, you are the product. So you get on IG and you shitpost or you twat about who's buying Twitter and why you ain't like that, and you create the very content and data that makes these platforms not only possible, but profitable, all while the corporations behind them bombard you with ads every 38 seconds. And that is a segue because today's video is sponsored by Blueland. Sometime last year, I did a video where I talked about the correlation between a poverty mindset and hoarding and my own personal struggles with that. Since then, I have managed bit by bit, and trust me, it is still a work in progress, to declutter my entire life and generally just keep my home tidier, which really helps with keeping my mind clear. And a huge part of that is reducing how much stuff I bring into my home and how much waste I generate with the things that I do use in my home. Avoiding single-use plastics and single-use items in general is major key, and Blueland is all about keeping this in practice with our everyday products. Everything they make is sourced from clean ingredients, which is what you want in your cleaning products, and they're priced affordably. And this part is critical: they also work. Blueland uses no single-use plastic in any component, from the bottles to the little tablets to the wrappers to the shipping materials. Everything's vegan and cruelty-free, and they're also made clean without ammonia, chlorine bleach, or parabens. Blueland is also EPA certified, which means that scientists over at the Environmental Protection Agency, they've evaluated every ingredient in the products to make sure that they pass the criteria to be safer choices. As I touched on a moment ago, Blueland helps you to cut back on waste, but also cost. Unlike your typical liquid sprays that you see in the cleaning supplies aisle over at the stove, which are sold in single-use plastics, with Blueland, all you need is one of these little tablets. When we throw out plastic bottles, we throw away money and generate a lot of waste. A single bottle of cleaner or hand soap can easily cost me $6 a pop or more here in LA, especially because I do prefer to use cleansers without chlorine bleach and those other nasties. With Blueland, it's just $2 a tablet. I don't think you can even get an e.l.f. lip gloss for $2 anymore. Their tablets actually go as low as $1.55 if you buy in bulk, so saving those literal coins can really stack up and make a difference. I got the Clean Essentials kit, which has their multi-surface cleaner, their bathroom cleaner, a glass and mirror cleaner, and a foaming hand soap. pretty much everything you need to get going, and a big bonus for me is the fresh citrusy smell. I love bright, clean scents. So it's nice not to only have cleaning products that smell good, but also to know that I'm not breathing in ammonia and bleach fumes when I'm using them. So click the link in the D-Box to get 20% off your first kit, and the Blue Line Girlies also let me know that they don't really be doing discounts like this, so y'all better get in this. As I was saying, ad placements, which only exist and have value on social media platforms because of you and your content, especially your one twat that went viral that one time, these ads can only exist and further enrich the rich because of our participation on these platforms. I say this as a person who is doing the thing that I just said right now in a hashtag spawn vid, but also as a person who in general monetizes my content writ large here on YouTube. And with every cent of ad revenue that YouTube takes in their cut from my content's earnings, I am literally enriching my arch enemies. I refer to the YouTube overlords as my arch enemies because I understand and have experienced all too well the type of social media censorship that fElon is pretending to bemoan. However, I also understand very well that fElon is whining about a weapon that isn't used against people like him in substantive ways. He has never been and never will be the target, the victim of meaningful censorship. That's below his tax bracket. The only reason he's bitching about freedom of speech is to dupe dipshits into thinking that by expanding his empire through juking stock prices and or through acquisitions, that he's somehow being virtuous. No. He wants to be the one who decides who does and does not get to twat freely about things like such as, I don't know, the allegations that fElon Musk exposed himself to a flight attendant and then paid her hush money, stuff like that. The guy is infamous for fomenting hostile, exploitative work environments for his employees and union busting. He's literally been sued for racial discrimination, and somehow he thinks he can still pretend that he's actually a man of the people. What's next? He's gonna try to sell you some blood emeralds on some BS about how they're actually more ethical? Lest we forget, this is the same guy who also welched on his pledge to donate $6 billion, for him, a paltry sum, to end world hunger if the UN could explain exactly how it would work. Which they did. fElon still ain't dropped that coin though. Never mind that he's the richest person in the world and shouldn't even be out here daring people to give him a reason to do something any halfway decent person would do anyway. And don't try to feed me some fairy tale about him donating quietly. There is nothing that this man does quietly. If he actually did anything worth a damn, we would never hear the end of it. This twatter thing, if it happens, is nothing more than a changing of the guard. Now, fElon will have greater control over who does and does not get censored on the platform since he didn't like their existing flavor of content suppression. Which is super surprising because as much as people kvetch about the Bird app being a woke liberal circle jerk, I've also heard consistently that blatant racism runs rampant and unchecked on there. So what's really good, fElon? You just want to make it even more inviting for the alt-right, I guess? Point is, it's a public platform that was always owned privately, although the fact that he apparently also wants to stop Twitter from being traded publicly, should this go through, feels especially nefarious somehow. Anyway, a social network is no different from a discotheque that's open to the public, but still has a dress code. Cry about your freedoms all you want. You ain't getting in the club dick and balls naked unless you own it. Or maybe you know the guy who owns it. But if you don't like who's getting in buck-ass naked and you're rich enough, you could just buy the joint. What's potentially changing here is who decides who has free speech. At first, people kept bringing up that fElon will likely allow Trump back on Twitter, and then Musk came out and said outright that he indeed plans to lift the Trump ban, but let them host fight. If you think Twitter is the linchpin in the success or failure of another MAGA administration, I really don't have time. I have never twatted, as some of you will know. I've never had an account, so I guess I'm a lot less invested in what all this might mean on the platform on a micro level than the Bird app enthusiasts. But I do think that who holds the reins matters. But I also think it matters more when we're choosing between a billionaire psychopath and the public versus this, where we're choosing between a billionaire psychopath and a different billionaire psychopath. Twitter was never yours, and it still won't be. The flavor of censorship is what may change, not the fact that the censorship will still exist. And who is censoring matters because that ultimately dictates what is being censored. Anything contrary to the interests of the head psychopath in charge now becomes misinformation, according to them. And there's also the danger of whom those in power not only suppress, but whom they choose to elevate. But that that's a whole nother kettle of fish. That is gonna do it for me today, y'all. I guess we'll have to just wait and see how this Twitter saga continues to unfold. But until my next video, make sure y'all stay safe, stay dangerous, and never ever trust anyone who capes for billionaires. Bah.
That's some nappy-headed hose there, I'm gonna tell you that now.